I should do before starting.
This meeting is being recorded.
Now listen to that. Well, thank you all for coming. It's really nice to see you all. And many of you I haven't actually seen for months. So I'm going to talk about Floating Trails tonight. And Floating Trails is a website that I built for people in small boats, including us paddlers. And this is not going to be a workshop in the sense of me walking you through doing stuff, because that takes a really long time and would need to be a smaller group. I'm going to, by the way, mute people because I'm getting echo. So excuse me 1 second. Let me do that. I can figure out how. Mute all. That's a convenient button. There we go. Mute all. All right. Nod if you can hear me. Yes, great. Not talking to a blank wall. So Floating Trails is a website, and it's designed for people in small boats to plan routes up front and make all the decisions and prepare all the do all the research that they need and create the materials that they will need on the water. It's not one of these apps that's more about tracking what you do on the water. You can certainly use it in your phone in a waterproof case to do things, but my philosophy is sort of figure out what you're going to do and get out there and don't assume you can use your device. So that's my starting point with Floating Trails is what can we do for people like us who are researching and preparing trips and need to find out a bunch of information and then hopefully get it into a form where they can use it on their deck. And in a nutshell, the philosophy of Floating Trails is keep it simple, but try to get as much power as you can from that simplicity. So you'll see it's not a very complicated program, and I don't think we need to have a long training session or some of the. I've tried to do workshops with this club before for more complex tools, and it really is. It's hard to if something is complicated, you're just going to try not to use it. So this is an attempt to make things much simpler. It's also built to share. So when you do your research with Floating Trails, it's very easy to give the result of your doing that to someone else, to other people and maybe in your paddling group, and just stick a link into a post. We'll do all these things, so you'll see. It can print charts. And although I started out thinking we'll have a whole bunch of PDFs for New England and it'll be a way to get to them. Actually, now you can print charts directly from Floating Trails. You just go to the place on the map that you want a chart for, and you say print chart, and it'll print a chart of that with other stuff on top of the chart that may be the things that you want to add to it. So that's kind of better than having all these PDFs that we share around, I think. It has tide and current displays that you can add to the map, and those are pretty useful, as we'll see. It has links to weather observations and predictions, which of course we need. And finally, it can be used on either a laptop or desktop or mobile. So it's kind of hopefully something that can work on many different devices. And so let's get started. I will share my screen and we'll walk through a bunch of scenarios for using it. And I do have you muted, but you can unmute yourself. At some point, I'm going to, hopefully often enough, I'll stop and ask for questions. Maybe I'll throw up a chat window so that if somebody has a burning question, they can throw it in the chat and I'll try to recognize it and address it. All right. Let's share my desktop. So, as I said, Floating Trails is a website, and you can Google the words Floating Trails, and these days it will actually come up as maybe the first or second search result, which is nice. But I just would go to floatingtrails.com. The first time you use floating trails, by the way, it'll show you kind of this welcome screen with some legal stuff on it. And you can click Let's Get Started, and it'll walk you through a little tour of what you can do. I'm not going to go through that little tour right now because I'm going to give you a more detailed tour, but just wanted to show you that's what it does when it gets started for the first time. It will also make an attempt to figure out roughly where you are the first time you use it. And here we are, approximately in Boston. So I will zoom in a little bit. And as I zoom in, you'll see that I've got the beginnings of nautical charts coming up as I get in closer and closer. So part of floating trails, a big part, is what we call the base map, which is the map that you can scroll around and browse and explore. And there are several different base maps, but the way you use it is a lot like you use Google Maps, moving around the map. You can drag the map from side to side. You'll go to different places. You can use these plus and minus buttons to make the map bigger or smaller, get different scales, different levels of detail. You can also use pinching with your fingers, either on a trackpad or on a mobile device, to make it bigger and smaller in the same way. And there's different ways to get around the map to get to a place that you care about. So one way to get around is to do what I was just doing. You can zoom way out and, find your way to some place you want to be, and then zoom into that place. In this case, Penobscot Bay. And then when you get close enough, it should hopefully fill back in with some charts. I don't know why we're not getting those. There we go. Sometimes that's a little slow. Another way to go to places, though, which is faster if you know where you're going, is to search. So there's a search bar up here, and I'll just type in Salem Sound. And Salem Sound is actually in that list. It's only US locations that you can search at the moment. All right, so we're back in Salem Sound. Now, by default, Floating Trails is going to show you what are called NOAA chart display base charts. And these are the new style NOAA chart. They are retiring the old charts that we love, the really readable, nice ones, because they're just too expensive. I guess they've decided to keep them going, as well as these new charts that are produced all digitally. So by default, we use the new ones. And the reason for that is that Floating Trails is not regional, it's nationwide. So, I could go to Miami and I'm going to get nautical charts of Miami. I can do that because these new modern NOAA charts do cover the whole country, and the paper ones are very rapidly going out of date and being retired. So I don't want to be pushing old style paper ones at people. However, let's just go back to Salem Sound again. In some areas, the ones that I happen to paddle in a lot, there are paper charts. You can choose different base maps in what's called the Layers tab down here. So you may have noticed there's these 3 buttons along the bottom, a set of tabs, and each of those reveals a bunch of features that have to do with the map or route planning. Layers lets you decide what information you're going to be looking at on this map. So the default, as I said, is the new style NOAA chart display. We also have, for New England, the old style maps. But you'll hit a limit on those. I don't have those for Miami or the rest of the country or Hawaii or Guam or whatnot. But it's nice to have them here, and they're still valid here for the time being. They will probably go away soon. There are other base maps too. You have a satellite view and you have a street map. So those are the basic base maps that you can get. And we'll stick with our paper charts because we like them. They're the best we can have right now. Other base map features are you can have magnetic north lines. So those can be turned on and off, and you can look at a coordinate grid. Now, I want to show something that's going to come up again and again with floating trails. It's one of the more important features of it, and it's called deep linking. So let's say I go to some place in floating trails and I've got a view that I like. It's of the area that I'm interested in, and I want to share that with somebody. Maybe I'm posting, hey, let's do a trip in Salem Sound. What do you guys think? And instead of, making a PDF or something and sharing the PDF with other people or trying to point other people at some other chart, I can just click share map in floating trails, and share map lets you share whatever it is that you're looking at in whatever view that is. They'll see the same region. So if I do share map and copy the map link, now that link has been copied to my clipboard, and I could say, put it in a text. I could send a message to somebody here and say, oh, let's go to this map. Say, I'll send it to Dan Carr because he's on this call. So I know I'm not victimizing him. And if Dan goes and clicks that link in his text message and opens it up, he'll be looking at the exact same thing I'm looking at. So, yep.
Sorry,
Somebody break in there.
Does that include? Yeah, does that include everything? Like if you turned on magnetic lines, all
Yep.
those features would be in there. Thank you.
Correct. That's why it's called deep linking. It's not just the region of the chart that you're looking at. It's like, what did you turn on? Did you turn on different layers? Did you show tides, which we're going to look at in a minute? What date are the tides for? Everything that you've configured about that map is shared when you share the map.
Cool,
So
thanks.
whatever you do to customize this map for your trip, when you share the map, you're sharing all of that.
That's awesome, Joe. I got it. It's beautiful on my
Yeah.
phone.
That's the way it should be. Okay, so I've covered sharing, which is a very fundamental thing in floating trails because it captures everything that's on the map. Another fundamental thing, this is fairly new if you've used floating trails before, is printing. So with printing, you simply, as I said, set up the map the way you want it, and you click print chart. Don't use the browser print function. That's not going to work. But use print chart, which is this icon up in the corner. And it will load up high resolution graphics for your chart and then prepare a version of that chart for you to print. In most browsers, Safari accepted. Safari doesn't work for printing too well. You can then pick a whole bunch of options like, do I want landscape? Do I want portrait? Do I want maybe 11 by 17 for a nice big chart? You can make all these choices, and you can sort of customize things like the margin, and it's going to depend on your browser and your computer exactly how this comes out and what options you have. But the main point is I'm finding that these charts coming straight out of floating trails, they're good enough to just print and use on your deck. And I've moved away from having all those kind of pre-made PDFs at this point.
Joe,
It's got a scale, it's got magnetic lines, and it's got a grid. So that's pretty good.
Joe, quick
Yes.
question.
Absolutely.
What do I do in order to have something I can send to my local Staples to be printed and laminated?
Okay, well, I mean, if I often do that, and what I would do is I would take this 11 by 17 chart and I would do save as PDF. Now I'm going to save it to a file on my machine. We can I'll just open that up
Got it.
so we can see it as a PDF. There it is. Well, it hasn't appeared yet, but there's our PDF right? You can see it's nice and sharp.
Got it. Thanks, Joe.
And this, you would just send that to Staples. Floating Trails does not do multi-page atlases and stuff like that at this point, and that's for another year, another month. So, yeah, that's browsing, searching, sharing, and printing. Any questions so far? This might be a good break moment. If not, we'll move on. We'll move on. All right. Let me move this bar out of the way. It's getting in the way. You probably can't see it, but I can. All right, we've talked about layers. Let's talk about just a few more things with layers, and let's go up to main. Part of Floating Trails is this very generic planning tool for marine charts and data that you can put on top of them. But in New England, I've added a little bit more because I know this area and I have access to some sources of information that I trust. It's not as complete as I would like, but it's something that we can use, particularly in the region from Massachusetts to Maine at the moment. So let's go up to Penobscot Bay. So here we are up in Penobscot Bay, and you can see there's a whole lot of markers. So these markers are layers for, I'll just turn most of them off. We have put-ins. We have day use areas. Whoops, sorry, I turned on too many things there. Put-ins, day use areas, and campsites. And any one of these are sort of a clickable thing that you can see on the map. And if you click a particular item, you're going to see details for it. The name, maybe a link to the business if it's a business. If it's like, here's an MCHT site, and if you click the link there, it'll bring up a new tab. That's MCHT's description of this preserve. So in New England only, we have this special set of data points that are launches and destinations, basically. Those of you who are MITA members may be wondering, what about the MITA Trail Guide, and does this overlap in, and what does this have to do with it? The answer is, at the moment, it has nothing to do with the MITA Trail Guide. It's only information that you can get other ways on the internet. So there's no private islands. There's none of the land trusts that are kind of like off the internet are represented here. There are only things that already have websites that are here. And MCHT, of course, has lots. So they're quite well represented. But this is, of course, not as complete a guide to the Maine coast as the MITA guide. Anyway, those are some of the data layers are these sort of destinations and launches. Then we have ferries. So there's actually ferry information on here, which is nice. It's not something you get on a typical marine chart. And if you print, the ferry routes will be on here. And you can click a ferry route to see what it is, and maybe even visit the ferry's website to get their schedule. So I don't bring the schedules into Floating Trails because they change frequently and would be a pain for everybody. But it's a lot easier to get to the ferry information than if you didn't have these lines. Another important layer is data buoys. So just step out here. These are NOAA buoys, and you can click on any of these to see what buoy it is and bring up a tab that is the buoy's own website. So this is kind of another Floating Trails philosophy, is rather than kind of try to integrate everything into Floating Trails, there's a lot of things that just take you to a place where you can find out more. And buoys are one example of that. Weather is another example of that. Click anywhere on a marker or not, and you have a link that will take you to NOAA's weather tab for that location. or windy.com in that location. So it's pretty easy to get from floating trails to these other resources. I don't try to do everything that they do because they do it better. Or NOAA observations near this point. So these are all tools that we use as paddlers and just trying to bring them closer to us. I think there's one last layer here that I should talk about. It's becoming obsolete because of printing, but when I started floating trails didn't print. So I made all these PDF charts that were kind of pre-made, and they're still there. I don't know how important they are anymore now that floating trails has decent printing, but well, if you want them, they're still there for now. I may take them down at some point. All right, that is a pretty decent walk through the layers world. Any questions before I go on to tides and routes? I never know how to say the word routes. What do other people say? Is it routes or is it routes? My wife's always making fun of me because I don't know how to pronounce English words, I guess.
It's route.
It is route.
I'm a root guy, but I'm from Pennsylvania.
There are root people. Okay, so I have a right to be confused. I'm from Chicago. I'm from the Midwest, so maybe they say roots there, and I'm just like, in the back of my brain is some little embryo of what I used to hear people say. Any questions about the layers so far before we move on to tides and stuff?
Actually, just out of curiosity,
Yeah.
Are the ferry lines updated if the ferries change their route?
Well, eventually. I mean, I bring them in from an open source map consortium, and the people who maintain them there do try to keep them up to date. But, that's why it says not for navigation on the website, because I can't really be sure that 100% of all this information is absolutely up to date.
But they are brought in real time? From
No,
those
they're not
other
brought.
sources?
Well, they're not
Okay,
brought in
okay.
real time. They're brought
That's what
in
I meant. Okay.
on a sort of, I'm trying to
Periodic.
do it on a quarterly basis.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Joe,
yes.
this chart has the magnetic lines on it. You don't have to have the magnetic lines if you don't want them, right? Okay.
Nope, I just turned them off.
And by
They're
the way,
off
I
by
say,
default.
people around here say route.
Around, you mean like Huron Village?
Yeah. West
Okay.
Cambridge.
West Cambridge. Good. In East Cambridge, who knows? Okay, let's talk about tides. So that was the layers tab. The tides tab will bring up tides. Here are some tides. And tides are always for a time and a date. So on the tides tab is a date. You can change that date to other dates. In 2023, got the whole year covered. And you can change the time. Whoops, I turned them off. You can change the time also. So as you move this time slider, you'll see all the tide stations and all the currents update. So that's kind of a really nice way to explore what the tides are doing in an area. We're zoomed out pretty far here, so you can see little numbers next to some of these things, and the numbers show you where multiple stations have been left out. Like there's 3 stations in this area, and we're only showing one of them. So I'm going to zoom in. Whoops. I'm going to zoom into Vinyl Haven here, and we can just kind of, I'll move this slider around and you can see stuff change as I do that. And there's 2 kinds of indicator in the tides. There's a tide station. This is a tide station, and it shows sort of like a little water level that's red when it's ebbing and it's blue when it's flooding. And the height of that water level is just relative to high water. So, you can't compare those 2 bars and say, oh, the water's higher over there than it is over there. It's just showing you where it is in the tide cycle. If you want the real data, you have to click on the little tide station, and it'll show you a little table with the actual numbers. So that's how you know what the actual height of the water is. And then there are arrows, and the arrows are shaded. Again, they're red. There's some shade of red if they're ebbing, and there's some shade of blue if they're flooding. And these colors are subjective. The darker the color, the faster the current. But again, if you really want to know what's happening, click the arrow and you'll see the tide table. You can also click through, as usual, to NOAA and get sort of, the full dirt on what that tide station thinks it's doing for that date. So anyway, the date kind of persists. And if we're planning a trip for, say May 1st up here, as we click around and look at the different tide stations and so forth, all this data is going to be for the date that you've picked. And you can zoom way out, which is kind of fun. I like doing that. Like, what are the tides doing on the whole East Coast? I don't know. This is kind of interesting to me. I never had a tool to explore that. So if you fancy like some exploration of how the tides vary across the whole country, you can do that. There's some really interesting spots, especially like up in the Inside Passage. There's so many tide stations up here. Look at this. It's crazy. Who knew? And of course, if you do, let's go back to the modern chart display. Be nice if this filled in. Oh, I'm probably zoomed out too far to see marine charts, but let's zoom in a little bit. Yeah, so if I have tides turned on and I print something, let's print. I'm going to get a chart that's printed with all that tidal information on it. And you'll see, well, you may not see because it's very small, but down here at the bottom, it says tides for May 1st, 7:30 a.m. Alaskan Daylight Time. So it can, any of the stuff that you overlay will be printed. Likewise, if I share this with someone and copy that link and, go to another browser, we'll go to Firefox and we'll look at it here. If you just open that somewhere else, I'm going to see the same tides for the same date. Deep linking, whatever you're looking at gets shared. So that is tides. And what else could I tell you? Well, what do you want to know? Are there any questions about the tide prediction stuff?
Joe, will you be sharing this recording? I have to go help put my kids to sleep.
Yes, I'm recording this and I will be sharing it somehow on NSPN. So good night,
All right.
Clay's kids and Clay.
So thank you.
Thanks for joining.
I might be back.
All right. Well, good luck with that.
Joe,
Yes.
did you say that when you share a map?
Yeah.
That it continues to be live and that you can scroll across it or scroll a timeline across it and it will be active?
Well, when you share the map, you are sharing a particular view of the map for the time and date that are in the slider. So I shared this with my imaginary friend in Firefox, and they see the same map with the same slider, but they can independently move that slider. It doesn't change my slider back here, if that's what you're asking. It's
Yes.
not a live collaboration. It's more like, here's a link so you can see what I saw. And then what you do is on your own.
Understood. Thank you.
Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, all the sharing here is it's not live collaboration. All right, well, let me move on to routes. Would be a good thing to do. So let's go back home to Penobscot Bay. And let's say that I am going on a trip in Stonington. Let's get over to Stonington, not Penobscot Bay. All right, here's Stonington. And I want to see put-ins. Here's the put-in for some ramp in Stonington. I've never used this ramp. And here's Merchants Row, all these beautiful islands around Stonington, which will now fill in. This is a case where the old paper chart, boy, it's so much better. Look at that. You can actually see the names. But anyway, we'll use the paper chart for this. And let's make let's plan a route. So to plan a route in Floating Trails, open the Routes tab. And you'll be in a new mode where on the map you can click and create lines. And those lines form your route. So let's say we want to start from here. I'm going to blow this up a bit. I'm going to start from the ramp. And maybe I'm going to head over to this buoy. And now I have the first leg of my route. You can see it's labeled with a distance and a magnetic bearing. And then maybe I'm going to cross over to this little barred piece of ledge sticking out of Russ. So that's my next route, next part of this route. And down here in this panel, as I construct it, you'll see I'm accumulating total distance, sort of seeing a few longitudes and latitudes. From here, maybe I want to go to, sorry, I'm trying to zoom unsuccessfully. I think it's because I'm zoomed as far as I can zoom. I'm going to go over to Potato. And finally, make my way over to, we'll go past Camp, Coot, Hell's Half Acre. And that's going to be the end of my route. When you're done, you can just go down to the Route tab and click Stop Editing. And now we have a complete route. So
Joe,
this route becomes something that's now part of your map. And of course, it can be shared like all the other things in Floating Trails. Yep.
now that you have this route on here, I don't see anything that I know that it has each distance and leg. Is there any place that puts it all? How did you get to that?
I just clicked the line. If you click any part of the route, it'll show you the total length of it.
Oh, okay.
And it'll show you the details for the bit you clicked. And you can also edit it again and change it. And I'm not sure why we're not actually seeing a distance marker in the middle. Oh, there we go. I wonder why that didn't appear at first. Must be a bug. Anyway. Yeah, so you can, clicking any part of a route will bring up just the total distance if you want that. I may make it possible to export some kind of table so that you can get that information out into a spreadsheet or something.
But Joe, this just shows that leg. Where does it show the total distance?
Oh, it also shows it right at the top. See, it says total distance 2.1 inside this little box.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, it'll do that.
So presumably, if you are not planning a route entirely in advance, but extemporizing as you go along, if you have a portable device with a connection, a Wi-Fi connection, say, you can plan a route in fog as you go.
Yeah, you could. I mean, if you have
Is my
reception.
question clear?
Yeah, your perception, I mean, your question, I think, was clear. You might or might not have reception.
Mhm.
I mean, you could do it. I wouldn't advocate doing it. I would, it's sort of more of an emergency thing. And hopefully you're able to just, use a chart in front of you to figure out the bearing that you need to be to get to where you're going, if you didn't already print something with a route on it like this. Yeah, so far I'm kind of shying away from trying to make this a thing that you use on the water, because to really be safe and robust, you'd have to actually download an awful lot of this information to your device and have it there, because you can't really count on reception in a place like this. So it's a lower priority for me having all this work on the water, but you could do it. Yes.
Very well, thank you.
Let's see. That's pretty much routes. Oh, I neglected to mention something before, which is you've seen a lot of these little pop-ups as I click on things, you'll see you can get details on tides or data buoys or whatnot. And any of these little panels that you bring up, you can also click a button that says copy info. If you do that, that information can be pasted elsewhere too. So, I could, what I can open here that would be useful, but I could go into notes and paste that information and it'll come up. So that's another way to get information out of floating trails somewhere else if you want to email it to someone or include it in something that you print and take with you or what have you. So that can be handy.
Joe, there's a question in the comments.
Okay, yeah, I'm not looking at the chat anymore. Actually, there's a lot of stuff.
Well, the one that just got added that hasn't been answered, is there a way to annotate the charts? And I wonder if that comment button would be the answer.
No, not the comment button is for reporting an issue with the map location that you saw. So it's a way of providing feedback.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about feedback. Coming soon will be adding waypoints and the ability to label them. But that's not a feature that Floating Trails has yet. It is needed, definitely needed. All right. Well, almost the last thing. Let me just talk about using this on a phone. It's a couple of things worth knowing. So I'm going to join from my phone and share the screen from there. And let's see if I can figure out how to allow myself doing that. I guess I have to stop sharing. Share screen. All right. Can folks see my phone screen? Somebody say yes.
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. If you can, probably other people can. So, so how to use floating trails on a phone? Well, part of it is almost the same as using it anywhere else. If I just go to floating trails in a web browser, I'll see the stuff that I'm used to seeing, and I can do all the same things I'm used to doing with tides, routes, what have you. They all work the same way. But, this is a little bit suboptimal because when you use it in an ordinary web browser, it takes up a lot of room at the bottom of the screen on this area that you see at the bottom where it says floatingtrails.com and the web browser controls. It's not very app-like. To lose all that space is kind of a drag. So what you should do if you were going to use floating trails on a mobile device commonly is do the following. on either Android or iOS, there's a way to add a website to your home screen. That's what you should do. And I'm going to do that now. I'm going to tap the center button at the bottom, which on an iPhone is the share button. On Android, I'm not sure exactly how you do it, although I have done it. And scrolling down, I'll see add to home screen. Just tap that. It comes up, it's ready to add an icon to the home screen for this website. And I'm just going to tap add at the upper right. And now I've got an icon on my home screen labeled floating trails. If I want to go to floating trails anytime, I can just tap that icon. It'll open up, and voila, that screen wasting stuff at the bottom is gone. So this is very app-like as an experience. It's taking up the whole screen, and it's making pretty efficient use of my screen.
Joe?
Yep.
Can you go back a few steps? When you were going down and saying tap on this, I didn't see what you were.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, let me take this off again. I'll get rid of this. I'm going to go back to Safari. Everybody with me? I'm in mobile, mobile Safari, or I could be in Chrome on an Android device looking at a website, looking at floating trails as a website. And I want to get rid of this extra junk that's designed for me to navigate around the web and just use floating trails. The way to do that is to do add to home screen. And to do that on an iPhone, I'm sorry, I don't have an Android to demonstrate how to do that. On an iPhone, you tap the share icon. I believe it's something similar on Android, and maybe someone on the call will confirm that. So I'm tapping that center icon, which is the same one that I would use to share a link with someone.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm scrolling up in the list. Copy link, not doing that. Add bookmark. I could do that, but I'm not doing that. And then finally, here's add to home screen.
Okay, I got it.
And that you just accept the default, and bingo, you will get a new icon for floating trails. Now, there's a couple of differences. Clay says, yes, it's the same on Android. Thank you, Clay. A couple of things you can do on the phone that you can't do very effectively on the desktop. One of them is geolocation. So if you are somewhere or other and you want to display the map for where you are, you can see there's this arrow beneath the plus and the minus, and that's take me to where the phone is.
Well, I'm sorry.
You see the button that's blinking?
Yeah.
Slowly? That's the button that I just tapped.
Okay.
And you'll have to say, yes, allow the app to use my current location. I'm going to click allow. And now I've been taken to Marblehead. If I turn on the street map, you'll actually see that it is showing me pretty much where I live in Marblehead. Close enough. So that's one difference. Another difference is that when you click share in floating trails, you'll get other choices. So, I could say, oh, I want to text this map to someone, and it'll just, do what you usually do when you're sharing a website with someone in a text message. So the sharing interface is a little different, but the spirit of it is the same. All right, I'm going to stop sharing from my phone.
So, when you share, you press at the top, just share map with the arrow?
Yeah, just share map. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to go back just for one final little bit to share my regular screen. Just to point out a couple of things that I didn't before that are useful. So I said you can share a map with other people by using share map, right? But you can also share a map with yourself, which is called bookmarking. If you want to remember, say I want to remember this route and this map, I can just use my browser's bookmark feature. A lot of people don't use the bookmark feature in their browser, but it is useful. I'm going to bookmark this tab that I've got open now, and I'll call it Stonington trip. and it's going to go in my my stuff folder. You can see I have all these folders full of bookmarks in my browser. You may have many of these, you may have none of them, but it's a useful tool. And now if I'm like, you know, Sam reading the paper and I'm like, oh, I want to see that Stonington trip that I've saved last week. It's going to be here in my bookmarks, and clicking that will just bring it back the way it was. So that's how you kind of take a memo of, hey, what was I looking at? I want to save it for later so I can get back to it. Coming at some point, you will be able to have accounts and log in and save things with regular names, and you'll be able to get at things in your list of stuff. But for now, this is how you save stuff you were doing. All right, that's what I've got. And now we can have kind of open-ended Q&A, tomato throwing, whatever you like.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you, great.
So
This is awesome.
Joe, I
when it
just
show-
want to say that
when you share your location, does it have an icon where you are, or just the general area?
Share your location. I think maybe what you're hoping we have is a waypoint, like a marker that you can stick on it, right? Am I reading your question right? Maybe say it again differently.
Like when you're using it on your phone and you click the share your location with it, does it show an icon where you are, or just
Oh,
take
you're not
you to
sharing
the
your
area where you are?
location. You're sharing the map. You're not sharing your location. You're sharing the map that you're looking at, which may be of your location and it may not be. Like right now, I'm looking at a map of some islands in Stonington. And if I click share map, I'm going to be sharing a link
Yeah,
that
yeah.
takes other people to this map. And it's the same on
I
the,
didn't mean share. I mean the little triangle over on the left.
oh, that just changes the map to go to, sorry, it's not going to work on Firefox. The little arrow changes the
Okay.
map view to be where you are, but
Got it. Okay.
it doesn't really create a mark there that you're sharing. So when you share that map with someone, they're just going to see the map of where you are, but there won't be a dot on it showing where you are. Hope
Got
that
it.
explains it. It's not like, you know, find my iPhone or share my location with a friend, which is, you know, that could be potentially have shocking results for your privacy. So we're not doing that.
Hey, Joe,
Yeah.
what are the logistics of sending a like share map to Staples and getting them to laminate it? Is there some protocol on the Staples side?
Oh, yeah. So somebody previously asked that. And what you do is you print
Okay.
the chart, you use print to print to a PDF and send them the
I-
PDF. They're
Uh,
not going to print. If you share them a link, they're going to be like, what do I do with this? In fact, if you try to print this from the browser, it won't let you. It'll say, it'll show you this print preview.
I see.
Regular printing doesn't work with this. You have to use the print function in Floating Trails.
So you send them the PDF.
Yeah,
and
save it as a PDF, which I could do here. And then
Mhm.
you send them the PDF using their website
I see.
to
There.
upload their PDF. It's just a PDF like any other PDF. So they're like, yay, we're printing a piece of paper. We know how to do that.
Okay, cool.
So Joe, I'm having some problems with the app-like version on the phone.
Yeah.
One is I can't get the little triangle to work to take it to, you know, where I currently am. And number
Oh.
two, I don't see a print function from there.
Yeah, printing from your phone is probably not going to work. What kind of device do you have?
On iPhone. And
Yeah,
that's
printing on
fine. I just,
iPhone is,
as Karen was asking, I was just wondering if there was a way to accomplish that. That's fine. I don't
if
care.
your screen is big enough, I think you might actually see the print icon, but it won't be very useful. Printing in Safari is kind of broken. So
Yeah, okay. Any ideas about why the location button might not be
you might
working?
have some sharing privacy stuff on your phone.
Yeah, I tried to look at that. I can't
Yeah,
find anything relevant. And it
Well-
doesn't show up as its own app in my list of apps to like set its own location.
Yeah, you should be able to do it even in Safari though. So there are multiple security settings for Safari as regards geolocation. And if it isn't all exactly lined up right, it won't do it.
Okay.
So I would try that first, but if it's still not working, correspond with me. Oh, and that's something important I wanted to say. If you're having problems with this, on the menu here at the right is about, getting started, and site feedback. Please use site feedback to tell me about bugs or ideas you have, or anything that, any kind of communication with me around floating trails. Just please use that feedback form. That's the best way to do it.
Joe, this is fantastic, and there's a lot of information, the put-ins and so on. How can we help you move this forward in the way you want to move it forward? If I find a new put-in, should I let you know?
Yeah,
Or
here's how to let me know.
how does that
um,
work?
Let's say there's a put in here on Grog Island. Well, it'd be a weird place, but we're pretending. You just click there and then click the comment button. What kind of comment are you providing? I'm suggesting a new feature on the map. Please describe your proposed change. There is an amazing all tide put in here with ice cream vendors. Okay.
Oh,
And
can you search on that term?
no, you can't, not yet.
No.
Okay, submit. And now I'll get that. And I'll be able to look at it, and maybe I'll even verify if the ice cream thing is just something you made up. But going forward, you ask, sort of in your question was another question, like the going forward part. How does this scale? Do we do this for lots of regions of the country? What about Rhode Island and Connecticut? What about Florida? What about Guam? I mean, I don't think I have a good answer for that right now. And really the expansion of floating trails, I'm focusing more on the map and tide and route and sort of generic features of it. And I think that this curated data that we have here for New England may well stay a New England thing. I can't promise that this is going to expand because the human labor to maintain this is pretty high. So, but in the meantime, yes, you all can help by doing what I just did and submitting your suggestions. And I have already gotten suggestions about this is wrong, take this thing off because it's going to piss people off. I've gotten a bunch of useful feedback, and I do change it. I respond quickly when I can.
Hey, Joe, it's Rob Nichols.
Yeah, Rob. Hi.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you just briefly take us through what you would do or how you would recommend doing a multi-day trip, a multi-day route?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So do you want to suggest one?
Well, let's go from Hell Half Acre. Let's just for the fun of it, go out to Saddleback.
Okay,
Couple of
yeah,
super easy days.
super easy days. Got to remember where Hell's Half Acre is. It's
You're
right
you're
there.
right on it.
There we go. There we go. I guess I'm going to keep the route that I already had. So let's make another one. I'll open up the routes tab. And I'm going to click start new route. And I don't know if we're launching from the same spot. Probably we are, but I'm going to just zoom out to see where Saddleback is. Okay, that's my long range goal for Saddleback. So let's say I'm going to go to this little ledgy piece here. And maybe I'm going to cross to Millet first and then hit this part of Saddleback. And I'm just going to wrap around. I forget where the cabin is. I think it's right around here.
It's right at the end of your last line.
Is
Yeah.
it there? Yeah,
No, further back.
further back. Let me edit it. Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
I know how we can find out. Let's look at the aerial view. I bet we can see it. Oh, I don't see it.
It's on
No,
the,
no,
the very southwest.
Yeah,
Oh, is it
Yeah,
right
yeah,
about
right
where the M is.
there. That's where it is.
where my cursor is?
Yeah, a little to the left.
Yeah, around there.
Yeah.
Around there. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I forget where it is. So yeah, I'm gonna delete, whoops, I need to edit this route. Let's edit it. I'm gonna delete a point and move this point over here. Okay, so there's my second route.
Mhm.
Let's go back to our nicer map. Yeah, did that give you a sense of what you were looking for, Rob, or?
Yep, perfect. I'm just wondering, can you change the color of the lines for different routes?
Not at the moment. No,
Okay.
it's kind of inflexible at the moment. You can't have more than one route, by the way. They don't need to be connected. So, you know, I could have this as a trip and I could maybe make some other trip up here. So forth.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Joe, I think either color or the ability to name the route would.
Absolutely.
Either way would be fine.
Yeah, color, naming, waypoints, accounts, all these things would work together to let you manage the objects more easily.
That's great.
Cool.
So Joe?
Yeah.
If I wanted to like capture this image, let's just say the image that's on the screen as is, and turn it into a PDF. Can I size the PDF to say 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17?
Yeah, and the place you're going to do that is in the print dialog when after you say print chart. So you can pick your orientation here. And you can pick your size here. I could pick tabloid, which is 11 by 17. It's going to make it bigger. Now, I am glossing over something, which maybe I should have pointed out, which is that, of course, the material on this map does not exactly match what's on your screen, right? It's bigger. There's more stuff on this paper than is on the screen, or less, depending on how you set it up. So, like here, it's truncating some stuff. And that means there is a trial and error aspect, right? You might have to go to this print preview and say, wait, I wanted more stuff on there. Damn, I guess I'm going to have to zoom out and try making a chart with that. Oh, now it's got my whole route on it. This is a disadvantage of the way printing works in floating trails right now. And it's happening because basically the browser tries to print what's on the screen and then it makes it bigger or smaller in a way that is not apparent until you print. So there's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem in getting your chart to reflect the area that you want. But if you play with it back and forth like this, it's not too hard. Like, oh, I want to shift this a little to the right. Okay, I'll just cancel. I'll move the whole screen over to the right. I'll try printing again. Does that look good? Yeah, that does look good. And now I'll save it. So
Joe, as I understand it, if you want, having the magnetic lines available eliminates the need for the rosette. Is that correct?
yeah, well, different
Or not.
people would have different opinions on that.
Okay.
But here's the problem, which is that on paper charts, compass roses, they put them wherever there's a nice empty space to put them.
Mhm.
And we don't have that luxury here. Also with the new digital charts, there simply are no compass roses anywhere. They just don't put them in. So
Wow.
really you need something else. And that's why the lines are there. They're kind of like the only steady recourse for the magnetic variation on the map that we have. It is the case that if you print, it's very hard to see this, but at the bottom, it does give the numerical. It says, variation is 3 degrees west or whatever. That's for people who like adding numbers.
Great.
Cool. Any other questions?
I'm not sure I understood that last bit about the magnetic lines.
Oh, okay.
Can you do a bit more detail?
Yeah, let me clear the routes away. And I'm also going to go to actually, I'm going to use the street map, which makes it easier to see the lines. So down here is a checkbox in the layers tab, show magnetic lines. And these lines are oriented magnetic north to magnetic south. And they're drawn to reflect a model of what the Earth's magnetic field is predicted to do that's like accurate over the next decade or something. So the map knows where you are, and it will draw those lines according to the expected magnetic field. So each line is sort of like a very simple compass rose where, upwards is north, approximately upwards is north, and approximately downwards is south. And you can use that in a printed chart the same as you would use a compass rose if you're used to working with these lines. Whereas compass roses take up a lot of room, and then we would have to have a way for people to position them, and it would get very complicated. So I hope that's explaining it well.
So are these magnetic lines some set distance apart? They look like maybe it's like half a nautical mile or something.
I think they're like I think they're 2 nautical miles apart, but actually no, what they are is they're a good looking distance apart.
Okay.
Like if you zoom out, they're farther apart.
Oh, so they're fixed, like
They're not fixed, they're dynamic, but I mean, the interval between them depends on the scale of the map. And they're not really there for measurement. They're there just as a reference for the angle. There's a coordinate grid, different checkbox. That's for measurement. Like that'll show you actually, degrees of latitude and longitude.
Joe,
Yeah,
this is Gary here. May I ask a question?
absolutely. Hi, Gary.
Hi, you could create a route from one magnetic line to the other that would give you the distance, and that would serve all the other distances.
Oh, you're pointing out something really useful that I didn't think of, which is, routes, among other things, are a way to measure stuff. I should have said that. That's really important. Yes. So to answer your specific question, yes, of course, we can measure the distance between magnetic lines on this map, and it looks like it happens to be 1.4 miles in this case. But routes are also a regular old measuring stick that you can use for measuring the distance between islands, so how far is it from this island to this island? Or you can move one end of the line around, and if you're trying to find, what do I see at 81 degrees? You can use it like a pair of dividers, right?
Joe?
Yeah.
The coordinate grids, are they a standard distance apart?
Yes, they are minutes of longitude and latitude apart.
And you said that
Well, that's
somewhere-
not a standard distance, but except for
Right.
latitude.
So you said that somewhere, I mean, if we generally know that, oh, it's a 16 degrees, we wouldn't need, and we like doing the math, we could just use the coordinate grids.
Sure,
As a-
like you bet. Let's take this one and make it go from one grid intersection to another. And you'll see that it's going to be exactly 2 miles because it's 2 minutes of latitude.
Right. And if we're used to doing that, and we know that all we have to do, that it's 16 degrees difference, then we can do the math and we don't have to have the magnetic lines.
Sure, you can turn them off. I mean, they're just
Yeah.
for people like who like them.
Right,
I happen to like them, but you don't have to have them.
okay.
So we're talking nautical miles, correct?
Yes, we are talking nautical miles. A minute of latitude is always a nautical mile.
Got it, thank you.
Gary, I digressed a little bit, but I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Maybe the magnetic lines should be some regular distance apart, but that's a suggestion you could put in the suggestion box.
Joe, this is a great asset for those of us who paddle. Would you permit us to share this widely with everyone we know?
I
Or
would
do you
encourage
think-
you to share this widely with
Okay.
everyone you know at this point.
All
I've
right.
been kind of holding off on publicizing it while getting it to a point that I felt better about it. But at this point, yes, I'm totally happy. And I know a number of coaches are using the tool now in the area, and they're using it, including it in their resources. So I feel like it's gotten to the point where it's okay to share. Yeah. Thanks for asking, though.
I think Maida would like to interview you or get a story from you for their newsletter. About
Okay.
paddling. I'm guessing. I mean,
Well, they know where
Dan-
to go.
Dan can chime in here, but I think this would be a great addition to a newsletter from Maida or MCHC or both. Yes.
Well, they know how to find me. So if they think so, I'd be more than happy.
Need to have a where's Joe?
Where's Joe?
Where's Joe?
I don't want you
function.
to have that. I don't want that. That's not a good feature.
Where's Joe?
That will
Oh,
not
he's
be
out.
implemented ever.
He's out on Jewel Island today, huh? Okay.
I don't want you to be finding me.
That's a beautiful thing.
All right. If we have no more questions, then this is a wrap, I guess. And I'm very grateful to everybody for coming and giving me the chance to share this. I'm very excited about this. This is basically what I do when I'm not paddling or cooking, doing dishes, et cetera, et cetera. So
Marvelous.
Marvelous.
Thank you so much, Joe. This is just spectacular.
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I agree. It is
Thank you.
awesome. Look forward to seeing you out on the water.
I know.
And let's
Yes.
let's use this. You
Let's
can
paddle.
paddle.
Mm.
Let's know
That's what
where
it's
we're
for.
going. Sounds good.
All right. Love to all. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a
Joe.
good night.
Bye, bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I
Good
don't have
night.
to here.